Scott Squires back with you on Aperture Atlantic. We're speaking with Paul Kimball. And Paul, you were mentioning some involvement in the 90s in the music industry around Halifax. What was that like?
It was great. I was in two bands, one called Tall Poppies, one called Julia's Rain. And from about 92 to 97, I guess, or 98, that's what I did. And we had a CD. Back then we released a couple of cassettes too. You know, because I work with actors and crew people who are a lot younger than I am. To them, CDs are dying. CDs are dying. Let me tell you something. We were releasing them on cassettes because CDs they existed, but they were way beyond our price range. And eventually, when I was a musician, they came down, and we all started going to CD. But cassettes. First thing we ever recorded, our drummer and I went out to my dad's Mazda 323, which was sitting in the parking lot. And the general rule of thumb was, if whatever you just recorded could sound good in a car cassette player, you probably had the mix right. So, because that's what most people would be listening to it on. Stuck it in, went, yeah, okay, this sounds pretty good. I think we're okay. Went back to the engineer and said, yeah, we're good. But, so it was a totally different thing, and it's changed in just 15 years, so that now people are downloading music. Part of me says, I wish I was a musician now, because it's easier to get your music out in some respects. And part of me says, I'm glad I'm not, because it's all fractured and confusing, and frankly, I like the days when people would just buy your album, because all of the songs mattered. You would take time to, as the Beatles did, construct albums where there was hopefully a progression of songs. And now, I think some people make 2 or 3 great songs, they work really hard on those, and then they just say, fine, here's 7 others that nobody's ever going to hear anyway. And so it's a quantum shift in how the music industry's run, and it's coming for the television and film industry too. Music was ahead of the ball, but that's happening now to film and television, and we're going to have to, over the next 10 years probably, face some of the same challenges that the music industry has faced and is still facing.
Well, it's interesting because it seems now that anybody with a cell phone, a digital camera, whatever, can make a film or a movie or whatever you want to call it. And I guess the YouTube generation, what's kind of the inner circle or the dinner table discussion amongst people in the film industry about this kind of explosion of anybody can do anything and put it on YouTube and it gets a look?
Let's be polite here, because some of these people might want to buy my film someday. I mean, the vast majority of it is unmitigated garbage. I mean, they're not filmmakers. That's like somebody saying, you know what, I read a law book, I'm going to go defend a serial killer and I'll get him off. No. You have to respect the craft of whatever anybody does. You drive a truck, you dig a ditch, you practice law, you open heart surgery. I mean, you can read about open heart surgery on the internet. I wouldn't want, if you did, you operating on me.
Exactly.
And so all these people, the UFO thing was real. The UFO sort of subcultures had people making these independent films for years. And what they would do is they'd sit down with a camera and a microphone, interview a guy, that's a film. So they got used to that. And I would try to explain to them, there's a reason why 95% of UFO films are garbage, because they're not made by filmmakers. The 5% of the films that were made by guys like me or Mike McDonald, who's here in Halifax, or other guys, that's what we do for a living. So yeah, we have like $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 budgets. So no wonder you have computer-generated animation and stuff. Surprise! We didn't do that for the $20 and a bottle of beer that this guy did it for.
That's right.
So in one sense, they're not filmmakers, but in another sense, it's the democratization of the way people make and record images and tell stories, and I'm all for it. Because I watch a lot of stuff on YouTube that from a technical point of view is garbage, but it's just fun to watch.
Yeah.
And the stories are usually weird and crazy and stuff, but sometimes they actually work.
Well, I remember my boys coming back last year one day from the library where you can get access on the computer to YouTube, and talking about this kid who had done this muffin song. And I went on and it was a kid singing about all these ridiculously crazy kind of muffins. And like you said, production value-wise, it was whatever, but it was kind of funny and entertaining. Now, I know that you also mentioned some of your work in and around UFOs, and I've always been fascinated by that whole kind of idea of yes, no, are they out there, are they not? What's some of your involvement? What kind of things have you done around that topic?
Well, I grew up as a kid. My uncle, Stan Friedman, who married my dad's sister 30 years ago, he's the guy who rediscovered Roswell in the late 70s. Probably the world's foremost UFO researcher of the last 30 or 40 years. World famous, Larry King and all that stuff. So I grew up, listening at the family reunions. It was either him or my more evangelical relatives talking about God. great for God. UFOs were more
UFOs,
interesting to me. Lovely people, but Stan was more interesting. So I always grew up with an interest in it. The first film I ever made as a director was a biography of Stanton T. Friedman is Real for Space here in Canada. And that dragged me into the UFO culture, partly the ufology, they call it, the subculture that is UFO, the people who look into UFO, the enthusiasts, the believers, but also into the serious research, and the two are separate, and I've always separated the two. Eventually, I kind of withdrew from ufology because I'd came, saw, conquered, thank you, but the serious research stuff I'm still interested in. There is something there that's worthy of serious scientific study. That's a very long. That's a 2-hour-long interview somewhere else. I firmly believe that. Whether they're aliens from Zeta Reticuli, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Could be unexplained atmospheric phenomenon we don't know about.
Yeah.
Could be, and now you see science speculating about, not speculating, saying it's probable that extra dimensions exist. Guys like Michio Kaku with string theory. Science has come around to all of these things that might explain aspects of the UFO phenomenon, which is linked to things we've talked about for thousands of years. Only in the old days we might have called them fairies or goblins or whatever,
Yeah.
or dragons in the sky. But we've been seeing things in the sky and on the ground for hundreds and thousands of years. And there's a role there for science to play rather than just dismissing the claims of people who say they've seen stuff. That's just the people. Then you look at the actual hard data, radar data, physical evidence. It's out there. Science just doesn't want to look at it. And that's a very long story.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that interests me about the UFO phenomenon now. And I do like going to conferences because they do know how to party. So.
Well, I remember as being a kid, there was a show on called UFO Project, and I used to watch it intently. Then when it was over, I'd shut the curtains.
Yeah.
So we've only got a couple minutes left. Quickly, what project do you have on the go now, and what kind of things can we look for you in the future?
Back to porn. No.
Excellent.
If only. They call it Silicon Valley for a reason. I start shooting tomorrow a film called Eternal Kiss, my first feature film that has major money attached, major in a small budget way, under $1 million, but still a real budget. Yeah. We shoot in Shelburne at the soundstage. We're the first group to go in since they've reopened it. It's been closed for a couple of years, so we're the guinea pigs. It's a vampire film. That's a love story that it has vampires as its lead characters. Nothing but great actors. Joe Galaccio, Carly Street, Christina Kafari, Nigel Bennett, who played a vampire in the series Forever Night, plays our vampire hunter, the senior so it's kind of a nice switch for him. David Conlon, Laura Bleasdale. I mean, these are all great actors, and that's the only thing I'm good at. Honestly, I don't know anything about film, but I am told that I'm a pretty good judge of who is a good actor, as I was when I was a musician. You can pick talent and work with them. I like working with creative people. And so all the opportunity to go down there, spend a month in this incubator working with these creative people, and then drinking with them late at night, talking about how we just worked and what we'll do tomorrow I'm just like, I'm like a bunny rabbit in a field of carrots. I'm so excited.
Well, we're excited that you joined us today, and we thank you very much. It's been great having a chat with you. Paul Kimball, thank you so much.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks a lot. That's Aperture Atlantic for this week. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.